It is such a great privilege and honor to address you on this momentous occasion, which is the 58th Independence Day. This day reminds us of the bravery, boldness, fighting spirit exhibited by our forefathers. Freedom is something that you have to fight for. As such, this Independence Day is a reminder to rethink of who we are and where we are coming from. October is a month that saw many African countries attain independence, the likes of Nigeria, Uganda, Guinea, amongst others. On that account, as I address my country, Zambia, I will extend my address to the continent of Africa. African Independence Day celebrations are a bitter, sweet taste to me. Sweet in the sense that our forefathers managed to attain political independence, but bitter because we have lamentably failed to attain economic independence. Political independence takes precedence to economic independence. After winning political independence, there is need to make full use of political power to go on to win economic independence. Only then will we approach full independence. I must categorically state that there is no independence without economic independence. Today, there is a consensus amongst Africans and non-Africans alike that Africa as a continent is far behind in terms of economic development. Most of the poorest nations in the world are on the African continent. For example, Africa's GDP accounts for 3% of the world's GDP, even when the continent's population is 17% of the world's population. 50 years ago, Africa and Southeast Asia were at the same level of economic development. Today, however, Southeast Asia is far ahead of Africa. Why did Africa lag behind? Why did Africa lag behind so much 50 years later? What did we neglect to do? The unfortunate part is that most of our African leaders concentrated more on political leadership at the expense of economic leadership. Here are my submissions on what I think we need to do in order to liberate Zambia and indeed Africa as a whole from the bondage of poverty. My approach to this is that we need an awakening as Zambian citizens by realizing that we have the power to attain the bright future we want, as opposed to thinking that the government is the only one that can save us. There are a few points that I would wish to submit to my country and indeed Africa. The starting one is that we need to stop our love for poverty. It is quite shocking on how Africa has embraced poverty. I don't get it on how we got so brainwashed with such an insatiable appetite for suffering. This unconscious behavior begins from a young age. From a very young age, we are taught to hate money. So if you are a boy, you'll be taught, if you show signs of, liking money, you'll be taught to say you end up being a thief. If you are a girl, you'll be told that you end up being a prostitute if you showed any signs of liking money. As a consequence, we grow up with this resentment against money. And religion has made it worse. It is so clear to me that there is someone who stood and put in a lot of hard work to misinform and misinterpret the Bible to mean that the poorer you are, the holier you are. As a consequence, we tend to believe that those who are poor have better chances of going to heaven. As such, we have embraced poverty as a people. This calls for us to change our mindset. And it is interesting that those that are suffering smile the widest because they believe that they will then walk on silver and gold when they get to heaven. As such, we comfort ourselves in poverty. And we are told that, no, blessed are the poor. Not realizing that blessed are the poor in spirit. So this must change. So this retrogressive mindset that demonizes wealth truly has to change. And because we have embraced it so much, we then get to demonize those that have wealth. We call those that have wealth Satanists. We call them thieves. We call them many negative words because we believe poverty is normal and wealth is abnormal. This mindset must change. So for us to attain economic independence, it begins with a change of mindset, realizing that it is okay to be wealthy. It is okay to be rich. If we embraced that, the trajectory of our continent would take a new shift. So I call upon my fellow Zambians, and indeed Africa as a whole, that we need to embrace wealth. This is extremely important for us. So I thought of beginning from that point that we need to change our mindset. The second thing which I strongly believe is important for us to embrace is this, and it is a question. We are not the only ones to be colonized. Let us put our acts together and stop this unreasonableness of blaming colonization for our circumstances. 58 years of independence and self-rule. Colonization should not be part of our vocabulary. Let us move on. I totally understand the evils perpetrated by our colonizers. I am cognizant of the shameless daylight theft orchestrated by our colonizers. My question then is, so what? Our colonizers were bad people. In fact, they were evil. But so what? Does that put food on our table? Of course, we need to understand history and its legacy, but we need to realize that it is a circumstance of the past. We need to realize that we are not the only ones to be colonized. China was colonized, India was colonized, Singapore and many other great nations today were once colonized, but they picked themselves up and moved on. Let us not be crybabies. We cannot achieve significant progress as a people if we do not realize that we are 100% in charge of our lives. The future of Zambia is dependent on the decisions that we make today. There is an important question that I would wish to pose. Where are the young people? Where are the young people? To begin with, we need to realize that no single society can flourish and grow while sidelining the majority. Youths account for 70% of Africa's population. So we cannot develop as a continent and as a country while sidelining the youths. And it is important for us to realize that it is the youths that have changed the world. It is the youths that have changed the narrative of this world. We can talk of Alexander the Great, who conquered the world at 23. Isaac Newton discovered the law of gravity at 24. Napoleon, who conquered Italy at 27. Billy Graham was a famous televangelist at 31. And Jesus Christ had so much impact such that 2,000 years later, he still impacts those that believe in him and those that do not believe in him. These were young people. Africa got independence through the hands of young people. It's the youths that fought for our independence. It is the young, courageous people who stood and said, we cannot be oppressed by colonizers any longer. As African countries gained their independence, young people like Mikombero, for example, became presidents. Mukembero became the president of Burundi at the age of 26 years old. And we have a number of African presidents who ascended to presidents when they were below the age of 30. Muammar Gaddafi was the president of Libya at 27. Valentine Stresser was the president of Sierra Leone just before turning 25. So when he was 24 years old, this youth was the president of Sierra Leone. Apart from that, big corporations that we celebrate today were founded by young people. Facebook, Mark Zuckerberg was 19 years old when he founded Facebook. Google, and all these big corporations were founded by young people. The question is, well, in fact, even in Zambia, young people have changed the narrative. It might interest you to note that Vernon Mwanga was an ambassador at 21 years old. We are celebrating independence today, which was brought to us by young people. If you looked at the first cabinet that Zambia had, the president, Dr. Kenneth Kaunda, was 40 years old. The oldest in the entire cabinet was Mr. Simon Mwansaka-Pwepwe, who was 42 years old. It might interest you to note that Ruben Kamanga, the first vice president, was vice president at the age of 35. It might interest you to note that Arthur Wina was the finance minister at the age of 35. Sikota Wina was the minister of local government at the age of 33. These were young people. So if you looked at the first cabinet, it was made up of young people. These were youths. But it is quite interesting to note that if you looked at our current cabinet, the youngest minister that we have is older than the oldest minister in the First Republic. So there is need for young people to rise to the occasion and realize that we have so much that we can achieve as young people. The challenge that we have as young people is that we have become so comfortable in mediocrity. We have become so comfortable in nothingness. As such, I call upon all the young people to rise and realize that we can bring about economic independence. The same way our forefathers brought about political independence is the same way we can bring about economic independence as young people. As such, it calls for us to rise to the occasion and see what we can contribute to the betterness of our nation. Let us not be comfortable as youths to be WhatsApp admins, just deciding on who to add and who to remove. Nothing serious. Let us not just be keyboard warriors on Facebook, demeaning others. Let us be youths with a meaning. Only then are we going to achieve economic independence. It calls for all of us to hold hands and realize that there is so much more that we can contribute for the betterness of our nation. As such, I call upon all the youths in Zambia and all the youths in Africa to realize the power that we have and to realize that we can change the narrative. It is about time that we did rise to the occasion as young people. And I should bring this to the fore, that it is not the role of the government to curb unemployment. We need to change this narrative. Let me repeat. It is not the role of the government to curb unemployment. I should indicate that no single government in the entire world can single-handedly curb the challenges of unemployment, regardless of how rich, regardless of how powerful they may be. No single government can do that. Some governments that have so much money, they have failed to curb unemployment, and they end up paying their citizens social allowances for not being employed. They have failed to create employment, but they have decided to pay their citizens salaries and allowances. It is for a simple reason. No government can curb unemployment. Governments have a role. And the role of the government is to create an enabling environment for the citizens to flourish. This is important for us to realize because this is what will bring us economic liberation. The role of the government is to create an enabling environment. The simple truth is this. Governments do not generate wealth. People do. Governments do not generate wealth. People do. People make wealth through trade and through businesses that generate value. The government's role is to uphold the rule of law and to ensure that the infrastructure works so that entrepreneurs can continue to make money. Can governments contribute to the generation of wealth? Yes. Although they don't generate it themselves, they can enable people to generate profits. What does this bring in? This then gets to remind us that for our country to flourish, for our country to become great, and for our continent to become great, it will call for yourself and myself to put our hands on the plow and not just look up to the government for solutions. This is extremely important. Let us wake up and get to the fore and be the solution to the challenges that our continent is facing and indeed our country is facing. The future of this country, the future of this continent is in our hands. We have the power to change the narrative. Let us move from the trajectory of always saying, Boma Iyanganepo. We can change the future of this continent. And I should submit as well that entrepreneurship is the way to go. I believe that entrepreneurs are national assets that should be cultivated and motivated to the largest extent. Entrepreneurs curb unemployment. Entrepreneurs bring about innovation. Entrepreneurs bring about national development. As such, we need to cultivate these people. Entrepreneurship is the way to go. If we are to attain economic independence, entrepreneurs need to be at the center of this. We need to realize that getting jobs has become very difficult. Back in the days, Zambia had two universities, the Copperbelt University and the University of Zambia. So if one graduated, a job was already waiting for them. 30 years later, Zambia has over 50 registered universities. Getting a job has become very difficult. It has become extremely difficult. In fact, even courses that guaranteed you a job on graduation. Take, for instance, medicine. Now we have medical doctors carrying placards, pleading to be employed. This underscores one thing, that getting jobs has become very difficult. And this is the story across Africa. As such, we need to wake up as a people and realize that entrepreneurship is the way to go. We need to continue pushing ourselves. We need to continue sensitizing ourselves. We need to continue talking to our children about entrepreneurship, our siblings about entrepreneurship, our family members about entrepreneurship, and everyone that we have influence over, that entrepreneurship is the way to go. It is only when we embrace entrepreneurship that we are going to have a scenario that will bring about economic independence. According to Credit Suisse, in 2000, China had 38 millionaires. 2000, China had 38 millionaires. In 2020, which is 20 years later, China has had 5.3 million millionaires. From 38 millionaires, 20 years later, 5.3 million millionaires. And it might interest you to note that 74% of the world's millionaires are entrepreneurs. It is only 10% that is made up of those that climb the corporate ladder as executives. Only 10% of the millionaires. 74% are entrepreneurs. As such, we need to embrace this as a continent, and we need to embrace this as a nation. Entrepreneurship is the way to go. For the longest time, we have not embraced entrepreneurship. It is about time that we did realize that the future of this continent will flourish if a number of us embraced entrepreneurship. As I wind down, I would like to share this. I've received this question many times. Dumisani, why do you do what you do? I received the question repeatedly on what makes me so passionate about entrepreneurship and the need for economic liberation. And I thought on this momentous occasion, I should share why I am so passionate about entrepreneurship as a whole. There are two things that have led me to this table. There are two things that have brought about the hunger in me for entrepreneurship and the need for economic liberation. The first one, you see, being born at a village, rising in my enterprising journey. When I turned 22, turning 23, my empire had grown a bit. And I could then afford to invest in what was my childhood dream, which was buying trucks. So I had these, big trucks, what we call truck and trailers, or 30-ton trucks. Now, because of coming from a poor background, a number of people had questions. And the questions were, this 22-year-old, this 23-year-old, how has he risen to this prominence? How has he made it? What followed after those questions is what hurt me so much. A number of people insinuated that no, this guy can't be this rich. There must be something. And the accusation for Satanism came in. This guy must be a Satanist. This guy should have joined Satanism. That is the only way he could make it this much. You see, those accusations were so painful. They were so painful, and I remember vividly at one time, I cried so hard because someone had told someone to say, maybe this guy is a Satanist. I cried so hard, and in my room, I said these words. I said, maybe it is better for me to stop working, to stop pushing, so that I can become poor and be embraced by everyone else. It got to a point that I realized that maybe it is better if I am poor and accepted by my society than to be rich and be called names by my society. But I later on realized that I was called that for a simple reason. What was normal amongst the people who were close to me was poverty. So seeing that breakthrough of poverty was seen to be abnormal. As such, I pushed for the need for a number of us to begin enterprising, because I know if a number of us succeeded, wealth and success will become a normal thing. Wealth and success will be normalized. We will not demonize people that are wealthy. We demonize people that are wealthy because what is normal to us and all we have seen is poverty. So it is in my interest and in our interest to see to it that a number of us get to succeed. That single scenario, when I was called names then, changed the narrative for me, and it changed how I look at life, and I have decided to push many others to embrace entrepreneurship so that we can have a number of us become successful. And I shouldn't get that, of course, that story died down over the years because they realized that no matter what they said, it was not making any change on my end. And we are where we are today because I kept pushing. But there are a number of other people out there who have been demonized by their families, who have been demonized by their friends, and they are getting depressed because of being called names. As such, it is in our interest to push each other so that a number of us can become wealth and embrace wealth. So the first one, why I push for the agenda of entrepreneurship, is because I was called that when I was young. The second reason why I do what I do is the experience that I had in France. I never get tired of sharing this story. I traveled in 2015, go to Charles de Gaulle Airport in Paris. Getting at the airport, the immigration lady, requests for my documents. Of course, I handed my passport. And she had a couple of questions for me. So the first one was, what are you here for? I said, I'm here for a meeting. From where? I said, from Zambia. Of course, that was already an upset question because she was already looking at my passport. So I said, from Zambia. Then she says, from which company? I said, DLN Technologies. Who are you that side? I said, I'm the CEO. The moment I said I was the CEO, she looked at me with so much suspicion. The first thing was, where is the invitation letter? I showed my invitation letter to her. Where is the insurance document? So I gave her all the documents I had. Then in fact, I went to the point of giving her the money that I had, and I showed her the Visa cards that I have these other Visa cards for me to sustain myself here. And here are my hotel bookings. I showed that to her. Then she requested for my bank statements, which I didn't have. I said, well, I did not carry the bank statements. Then she said, no, I can't take you in. I said, but why? So we ended up in the hands of the supervisor. They communicated in French, and the supervisor asked me, the first question was, where are the bank statements? Then I told the supervisor to say, you see, when you are in school, you have an identity card and a student number on your identity card. It is unreasonable for the lecturer in your classroom to stop you and ask you for your grade 12 results, for your acceptance letter, and for all those things. Why? Because by virtue of you having your identity card and a student number, it simply shows that you passed through the process. That is the only way you could have the student number and the identity card. So in my case, you have my passport, I have the visa there. I saw no need for me to move around with the bank statements because I passed through the process. In fact, I should indicate to you, sir, that in Zambia, it takes as long as 21 days to get a visa to come here. I have been interviewed, I have been scrutinized, I submitted all those things that you are requesting for. This man says, well, we can't take you in. We'll put you on the next available flight back to Zambia. At that point, what trickled in my head was that this is how Africans and indeed Zambians are ill-treated. I decided at that point that I'll fight for my continent and I'll fight for my people. I told the man that you have no right to deport me. You have no right to send me back. Then he said, no, we are not deporting you. We are just sending you back so that you can avoid the documents. I said, you have no right to do that. I have a visa here. I said, you are going to court. At that point, I'd never been to court. I have never been in that kind of an environment. But I felt that someone must stand up to this unfairness and someone must fight for our people. Interestingly, there's a very interesting system that side. Court papers were presented, entered the court papers, and I was set to appear in court in 3 days' time. Since I was appearing in court in 3 days, I could not be held at the airport. So I had to be taken to the Red Cross Center in a police vehicle, people with guns in the vehicle, one vehicle in front and the other one behind, and sirens are on. Getting that side, they got my laptop, my phone, and everything, and I was locked up. On the third day, I appeared in court for the first time in my life in Paris, France. Getting to the court, then I had received the bank statements from my bank. Getting to court, the judge looked at my passport and she said, you had no right to hold this guy because he has an authentic visa. The number two, the kind of money that he seems to be making in his country, he cannot possibly make it here. As such, he has no motivation to stay here. So I was released by the courts. But as I was released by the court, so if you looked at my passport, the first time I entered France, it was not stamped because I was released by the courts. But by that time, the meeting that I had gone for had ended and I had lost out. But a thought hit my head. The time I was at the airport, Those who are coming from well-to-do countries, those who are coming from countries they call first world, there were no questions. Where are you from? States, stamp, no question. Those countries that were viewed to be well-to-do, no questions. They were just getting in. Myself, who is seen to be coming from a third world country, as they call us, I had to be subjected to that. Despite being successful then, I could not be respected there. As such, I resolved that there is need for a number of us to become successful. Only then are we going to be respected out there. So the reason why I fight for my people, the reason why I push for the need for entrepreneurship is for a simple reason. We need a number of us to become wealthy. When we become wealthy, only then will the outside world respect us. So it is in our interest for us to become wealthy. And if anything, I believe that if a number of us became wealthy, it increases my chances of success too. Because it simply means that there are many more people who can buy my products. So those two reasons are the reasons why I push so much on entrepreneurship. But the question would then come in. What am I doing to change the narrative? I know I have talked of what we need to do. I've talked of our status quo. The question is, what am I doing to change the narrative? We can blame the system and we can say all we can say. I have decided to play a role in the betterment of my country and indeed my continent. Two things that I will do as I conclude my speech. Two things. The first one, I have decided to invest heavily in teaching young ones entrepreneurship from a very young age. On the 20th of November, which is basically 3 weeks from today, we'll be launching a project that teaches entrepreneurship to young people. There are tablets that will have a component that has to do with youngpreneurship. So it will be called Radical Youngpreneurs. We have something for the teens called Radical Teenpreneurs. And what we have also decided to do is not to end on teaching young ones, because we have realized that the potential of these young ones is caved by parents. As such, we have set up something for the parents as well, to teach them on how to raise enterprising kids. We have invested in this project for the past 3 years. So much has been put in, and we are finally launching. So there will be tablets, there will be the web-based academy, there will be books that will teach entrepreneurship from a very young age. I felt I should do that and contribute that to the betterment of our nation. And the launch, actually, coincidentally, will be taking place in this same auditorium on the 20th of November in the afternoon at 14 hours. Everyone is welcome. I would invite you to that special occasion, because we'll be redefining the future of this continent. We'll be redefining the future of Zambia. It is important that you get to be part of that. A number of us have blamed the syllabus, the curriculum, and all this. We've said all these things, but what we have opted to do is to bring in experts and put in practical entrepreneurship lessons from a very young age. And we are teaching entrepreneurship actually from young kids, as young as 1 year. They need to learn to embrace entrepreneurship. I thought that would be my contribution to the betterment of this country and continent. The last one is that we are starting a movement. We are starting a movement, and this movement will be called the Revolution for Economic Freedom. Revolution for Economic Freedom. In short, REF. REF, which is REF in short. Revolution for Economic Freedom. This movement calls for all of us as citizens of this nation to join in as we champion the need for us to take part in the development of our nation. Enough of being spectators in our own economy. Enough of being aloof in the development of our country. It is about time that we come together in a movement to push the agenda of entrepreneurship, to push the agenda of economic emancipation, to push the agenda of economic liberation. It calls for all of us to come together and hold hands. So all those that believe that Zambia can be great, it is about time that you came to the fore and joined the revolution for economic freedom, REF in short. It is a movement that will change our mindset as a nation. It is a movement that will change the future of this country. And the motto is simple for this movement. The motto is, we have come. And the symbol is, we have come. So this is the symbol. Twaisa, Twabola, Tabwera. We have come. And who has come? We have come as citizens to champion the development of our nation. We have come together as citizens to change the narrative of our continent. We have come together as citizens to take part in the development agenda of our nation. Enough of looking forward to the government to change the narrative of our economy. It is us as citizens to rise to the occasion. You may be proud to be Zambian, but the question is Zambia proud to have you? The time is now to make Zambia proud. Be part of the revolution for economic freedom. Twaisa, Twabola, Tabwela, and we have come. The time is now to make Zambia proud. Happy 58th independence to the Republic of Zambia. May God bless you.